Is the only tax rate that has changed. Your personal property tax remains at 375, and all the other levies that we currently collect would remain the same as well. In addition, although I missed item number 9 on O-04-20 also changes, and that's the Bottoms Bridge Service District, the ad valorem tax that we currently assess. That will change from 15 cents to 13 cents, a 2-cent reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. At this time, do we have any questions or discussions? Need a motion on this ordinance O-04-20?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 0-04-20 as presented to impose tax levies on real and personal property for the 2020-2021 tax year.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. All right. Next on our agenda is amendment to Appendix A, fees of the New Kent County Code. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. Pause with me for just a second while I bring this up. Lost everything. Okay. Before you, you have ordinance O-05-20, which provides proposed amendments to Appendix A of the New Kent County Code. Appendix A is where our fees are located. And there's various fees that we have proposed for amendment. We've been over the individual fees in previous meetings, and we've conducted a public hearing on the proposed fee changes as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, if there are none, I move to adopt ordinance O-05-20 as presented, amending Appendix A fees, general government fees of the New Kent County Code.
Thank you, Ms. Evelyn. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. Thank you. Item 3, adoption appropriation of FY 2020-2021, the capital improvement program. Ms. Hathaway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, with ordinance R-25-20, which consists of your capital improvement program, we have recommended projects totaling $3,155,169 in funding. Just a note on that, this includes all sources of revenues, including proffers and grants as well. We've gone over the projects individually. The resolution before you lists the total amounts by departments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or concerns as we review our CIP budget? Bearing none, if we could have a motion.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Tiller.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt resolution R-25-20 to adopt and appropriate the New Kent County, Virginia fiscal year 2020-2021 capital improvement program.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. Item 4, adoption appropriation of FY 2020-2021 governmental and school budgets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you, you have Resolution R-26-20, which proposes a FY21 budget consisting of a total of $75,062,698. At our last meeting, we conducted the public hearing. The code states that you have to wait, I believe, 14 days, maybe 10 days, after the public hearing before you can take action. We've waited the appropriate time, and therefore staff is requesting action on the proposed budget.
Are there any questions? I do have one.
Yes.
With the change in with the reduction and cuts in the state funding, does that affect social services fund and also the airport fund?
It's my understanding with social services, it impacted them by the raises that they were proposed. I believe social services was proposed, I believe it was a 3% raise. We're no longer budgeting that salary increase at this time. But that's the only impact to social services.
Okay.
As you're aware, with social services, basically it's a matching of funds there. I believe it's a 85-15 match or similar, close to that, where the county is responsible for approximately 15% of their revenues. We're still anticipating the full 85% of the state funds coming in. As far as the airport, we've received no indication that those funds will be impacted as well. A lot of their funds from the airport actually comes from fees that's charged at Richmond International Airport and other major airports around the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Lockwood.
Mr. Hathaway, would it be appropriate or fair to say that, we're presumably passing this budget today, but that everything is still on the table, not knowing what the future is, that everything is subject to change based on revenue and so forth? Is that a fair
Most
statement?
definitely. That's a very fair statement. I mean, things are still pretty fluid. We've made some cuts, as you know, from my original presentation back on March 9th. But things are still changing. So, yes, that's a fair statement that I could potentially be coming back before you at some point throughout the fiscal year with amendments. Yes.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Are you ready for the motion?
Madam Chair, I move to adopt Resolution R-26-20 to adopt and appropriate in the New Kent County, Virginia fiscal year 2020 through 2021 governmental and school budgets.
Thank you, Ms. Evelyn. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? And Ms. Page?
Aye. Item 5 is adoption appropriation of FY 2020-2021 Public Utility Fund budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you, you have Resolution R-27-20 requesting the adoption of the Public Utilities FY21 budget totaling $5,806,413. And just to note, you'll see on the resolution that total amount is broken into the Water and Sewer Fund, which is a general fund that serves the majority of the county, and the Bottoms Bridge Utility Fund. But those two numbers, the $4.7 million for the general Water and Sewer Fund and the approximately $1 million for Bottoms Bridge Utility Fund, totals the $5,806,413.
Thank you, Ms. Hathaway. Questions? Concerns? Ready for the motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Lockwood?
I move to adopt Resolution R 2720 to adopt and appropriate the New Kent County, Virginia fiscal year 2020 through 2021 Public Utility Fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Evelyn? Aye. Mr. Tiller? Aye. Mr. Steers? Aye. Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. Item 6, adoption of reimbursement resolution R-24-20.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution that we bring before you every year. R-24-20 allows the county to move forward with capital projects that we anticipate a borrowing on. And by adopting this resolution, we give ourselves the authority to reimburse some of those initial expenditures that we anticipate borrowing on for certain projects. For example, a new elementary school. We anticipate at some point the construction of a new elementary school, but if we incur any costs today that we fund out of our general funds, such as engineering, right-of-way acquisition, we can reimburse ourselves with the adoption of this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Hathaway. Any questions, comments? You ready for a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Tiller.
I move to adopt Resolution R-24-20 declaring the board's intention to reimburse itself from the proceeds of one or more tax-exempt financings for certain expenditures made and or to be made in connection with capital improvement projects for the county and the county school board.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? Aye. Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Item 7, adoption of the digital version of the New Kent County seal. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you. We have been looking for a clean digital copy of our existing county seal, and we could not find one. One of quality where we could put on letterhead and other county items, official items. So therefore, we consulted with a graphic artist, one Scott Lehman, who we've used on occasion. And initially, we asked him for a clean digital copy of our seal. And through conversations with Scott, we gave him free rein, I guess, to propose some improvements to the existing seal. But we still wanted to keep the original character of our seal. And through several revisions with staff, this is the seal that we're proposing today for your consideration to adopt as our official county seal. The state code gives the Board of Supervisors the authority to have a county seal. It says you may have a seal. It doesn't require one. And it also gives you the authority to change it at your will. So therefore, you do have a motion before you if you approve of the new county seal. And this is what we would use if it is approved. Our county flags and other items, business cards, things like that, would carry the new seal.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Any comments?
The guy on the left looks like Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Until you mentioned that, I didn't notice that, but you're right.
If we adopt this, we're not going to go through and recreate everything, right? As needed or as replacements and stuff.
Right, as replacements, like flags. We're not going to immediately change over all of our flags, but our flags usually last us a couple of years, and as we replace those, as they get worn and torn, they'll start to carry the new symbol.
And to answer that, for our regional boards, they would need an updated flag as well.
We would
And
get VACO.
VACO.
Yes. And in the planning district, I believe in their conference room, they carry all the county flags as well.
And so I noticed that some of our regional meetings, we have the New Kent logo. And I was like, is this our seal? But then when I was walking down the hallway, I saw our seal, which in reading, I found out that it was created through a contest that the county had. Absolutely love the description of why we have our three men there. And so, but when you look at like the sheriff's department's seal, the patch they have, and other patches that we have, New Kent doesn't really stand out. And when you look at the other localities, they actually wear their lapel pin with their seal on it versus their county logo. And so this is, talk to Krista, who is fantastic at her resources. And so this is the proposal that we came up with. So bringing it to you for your thoughts and suggestions. Maybe some of the characters, or at least the Scooby-Doo guy, might need a uplift, but...
And one other challenge we had too, there's probably about 5 different versions of our current seal floating around. The backgrounds are different. Some of them have deer, some of them don't. Some have the house, some don't. I believe there's some with trees or something in the background. So we really need to have one seal.
Any thoughts or suggestions before we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the digital version of the New Kent. I move to adopt the digital version of the official New Kent County seal.
Thank you, Mr. Evelyn. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Steers? Aye. Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. Item 8, approval of a sole source procurement, ID networks, I'm sorry.
Thank you. You have before you a request to approve the sole source procurement of ID Networks, which is a software system, the CAD system that our dispatch uses in our sheriff's office. The expenditure price is $45,360, and this is a maintenance fee, an annual fee that we carry with the software. And because it is a maintenance fee, I feel it's appropriate as a sole source because we can't go to any other vendor and get this fee unless we change our software package. And because of the amount also, we're bringing this to you for approval. Normally, this would be something on a consent agenda, but we received this bill late from ID Networks, and I've placed it on the work session in an attempt to expedite the payment.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway.
I don't have any
Questions?
issues with.
Go ahead.
I don't have any issues.
Okay. You need a motion? Oh, I had one question. Isn't this a maintenance fee that Sheriff McLaughlin negotiated it to? Is this the one he negotiated to get it down or extend it?
No, that's our radio system.
Okay.
And actually, he was able to get us an additional year of warranty on our radio system.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Sheriff McLaughlin. Calling for a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Lockwood.
I move to approve the Sheriff's Office request for the sole source procurement of annual maintenance services from ID Networks for CAD, Mobile CAD, RMS, and the Civil software system.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Lockwood,
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn,
Aye.
Mr. Tiller,
Aye.
Mr. Steers, and Ms. Page.
Aye. Item 9, FEMA flood map status update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just to give the board a quick update on where we're at, this is a multi-year project. FEMA is rolling out new floodplain maps for the county. The last updates were in 2015, which addressed a portion of the county. This update is the entire county, which replaces some maps that were still in effect from '09. In your packet, you'll see a brief little dashboard that FEMA has prepared that really addresses the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program here in the county, as far as costs, structures, average premiums, things like that. With this update, there are some additions and reductions in the overall floodplain for the county. This update will include roughly 27 new structures, but it'll map out roughly 29. So the number of structures in the floodplain are relatively the same. But we do have some citizens that will be mapped in, as well as those mapped out with this update. You'll see a draft of the template letter that'll be mailed out. That's going out this week to all the property owners. We have about 5,000 or so properties that are encumbered by the floodplain, at least on a portion of the property, not the structure, but a portion of the property. So we're notifying everyone that has floodplain on their property. Kind of goes into the background, gives a little bit of detail on how these changes will affect development on their property, and then also gives them the mapping resources where they can look and find where the new boundaries are. And these are still preliminary, which is clear in this letter. This notification is to get property owners thinking about what changes they need to do, as well as what they need to look at for future development. In the fall, roughly October, November, there'll be a 90-day appeals period that FEMA will put out. We'll advertise that, so that'll be known. But right now is the time for citizens to look at the new maps, figure out if it affects their structure, their house, anything like that, future plans for the property, and start getting data together. During that appeals period, citizens, property owners can submit formal appeals to the preliminary maps. It's got to be supported by engineering studies, and FEMA will review those as they're accepted during that 90-day period, which can change the preliminary maps before they become effective. So this is the chance for citizens to really reach out, figure out where the new lines are, and we're working with Map Forbes to get the preliminary on our county GIS, aside from just the FEMA mapping systems. In addition to those, in your packets, we have just basic flood hazard fact sheet, the quick down and dirty on appeals, comments, firms, things like that. I do want to point out on the dashboard at the bottom, there's a timeline of roughly where we're at in the process. We had our community coordination and outreach meeting this winter, early spring. And right now we're in the citizen notification period in between before the appeals period will start, which is tentatively set for October, November. FEMA will let us know when that officially starts, and we'll put out a public notice. Once that's done, the 90 days is up. FEMA will issue a letter of final determination after all the appeals were reviewed and the final maps are prepared, and then those maps will become effective, which will come back before the board, and the board will need to adopt those maps within a time frame after FEMA's final determination. Are there any questions about the process or where we're at right now?
So to be clear, all of the landowners that this will affect have been notified.
They will be. We have a letter going out this week. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we will get the information regarding FEMA's decision.
Yes. Once after the 90 days appeal period this fall, the appeals will be submitted through the county. In turn, we'll submit them to FEMA. FEMA will review any appeals that are submitted and make necessary changes to the maps where warranted based on additional data. And then those maps will become effective when we adopt those maps after their final determination.
And do we have to have a public hearing before we adopt?
Yes, because
Okay.
it'll be an ordinance amendment. Yep.
Okay.
Where is the new maps that they're using?
There's some links here at the bottom of the template letter that has those resources, and we also have hard copies here in the office, which can be reviewed. It's easy, a little bit easier online. The hard copies, the scale is a little bit difficult to see. Where these, you can zoom in on specific parcels and things like that.
Any more questions? Thank you so much for your presentation. Other business. Ms. Hathaway?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask our fire chief, excuse me, our fire chief, Chief of PET, to come forward with a COVID-19 update.
Okay.
Well, good morning,
Good morning, sir.
Chairwoman and members of the board, Mr. Hathaway. As of this morning, we are in our 74th operational period in emergency services for the COVID-19 pandemic. As you probably have seen in the VDH website, we currently have 35 cases in the county. Of those, as of this morning, all but 6 have recovered. We have 6 still that have the virus going strong, and we do have 1 death. We're probably going to see those numbers increase here over the next few, simply because VDH is getting a lot of the testing sites up and rolling. Tests are readily available, to include one here in the county next Wednesday, June 3rd. That is something I want to get out to you so that you can reach out to your constituents. We will be hosting, the Chickahominy Health District will be hosting a testing site June 3rd from 9 to 11:30 at the New Kent High School. And this will be open to folks that have symptoms. And if you're not sure, or they're not sure, to go ahead and call the number that we do post here in the next few days to consult with VDH and the Chickahominy Health District to get signed up and to come into the testing site. It will be a drive-through site at New Kent High School. Once you sign online and you show up and you check in, you roll through the line and you're in and out, and the testing process starts and convenes, and you'll eventually get your test results back. We discussed to open and be friendly to our neighbors, and it'll be open pretty much to anyone in our region around us, including James City County, King and Queen, King William, the town of West Point, Charles City County, any of our close regional neighbors. They're all welcome to attend this testing as well. So that is coming up this next Wednesday, June 3rd at the New Kent High School. More information to follow. We'll be blasting out social media, as well as the Chickahominy Health District will be doing a press release out to all their media outlets. So more to follow in the next few days for that. As far as fire and EMS in the last 11 weeks, we responded to, and this information is about a week behind the way we're calculating it, but we're to about 312 EMS related calls. Of those, about 44 of them that had received some type of risk for COVID. In other words, they experienced some type of symptoms of COVID-19. 11 weeks ago, we put in a very a very strong policy about PPE wearing, and I'll be pleased to say that all of our force, both on our side and on the sheriff's side, are very healthy. We have no one on quarantine. Everyone's following the policy out there, and that's the good news of it all. Is all our responders are in good health right now, based on COVID-19, and that's what's happening there. As you probably all seen, we did receive notification that we are going to be receiving a little over $2 million in CARES Act relief from the federal government. That should be hitting our bank accounts here right after June 1st time period, coming through our Treasury. And we have come up and developed the process through a very strong work group that's been working on this COVID-19. And it's a very strenuous process, very similar to we do our budgeting process here in the county. And there are limitations on this funding, on what you can and what you cannot use this funding for. So we have to use this funding, this first pool of funding, by December 30th of 2020. So right now we're working through those. We've set up some portals for requests and for the needs that we truly need to get on board here, especially with PPE. Probably one of the most strenuous and arduous tasks was finding PPE on the beginning and sanitizing and solutions. I'm pretty happy to say that we're in pretty good shape right now. Our logistics staff is preparing for our county employees returning back to government here soon, whenever that may be. We grew out of our first logistics workspace, and we're now in our second one, and I'm here to say that we've grown out of that space as well. But the bottom line is we're trying to prepare our counties, preparing everyone who's coming into our buildings to be safe, that there's a safe environment for the citizens to come into, and making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed when it comes down to what policies that we're going to have for when that has happened. So we're working on that. All employees will be getting a care package here, hopefully by this Friday, and all departments will have that delivered to them. And we'll continue taking those PPE requests through our online portal and taking care of our folks as they need them. We're very closely working with our schools in their preparation for a school year here in the fall. That is actually a very big task, because we do want to make sure that all the students, all the teachers, and all the parents and visitors coming into that school is protected as well. So we're working with Mr. Nichols and his staff to make sure that the schools are ready and prepared for fall, hopefully come back to school going forward. So that's where we are. Again, right now, most of our time is focused on right now logistics, getting the county back in order, as well as dealing with the 911 calls that come in. And I know the sheriff's office, I don't want to speak for the sheriff, but I know they're handling the calls daily too that has increased on their end of what they deal with as well. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of where we are on the COVID-19 response.
And I'd like to thank Chief Opet for his hard work and efforts with the COVID-19 response. I'd like to make one, in case there's any public watching, if you have a situation that prevents you from being able to travel to the testing site on Wednesday, please register anyway, because we are making arrangements with the health department to do some mobile testing, which Chief Opet is arranging with the health department, utilizing an ambulance and some of our staff. So please register anyway, even if you feel that you can't get to the site, and we'll try to accommodate you.
Chief, that $2 million, how's that going? I mean, how's that being determined where that's being appropriated? I mean, who's making those decisions?
With the process that we have right now, we've kind of briefed the staff on what is allowable expenditures for this. And what we've created is a process, and everyone's able to access that process through the county, through the website to make those requests. And the portal is actually very detailed, where they have to choose what subject or what category that expense falls into. When that request goes in, just very, very similar to the CIP process that we have here, those requests are going to go forward a committee, budget committee. I'm not sure Mr. Hathaway was going to work with Mr. Stoddard in coming up with that committee. Present that, make sure that it does fall within the parameters of the grant. And then once we do come up with that, we're going to generate a budget. Now, what the work group has determined is that we're going to come up and split that in half, because we don't know what July, August, and September is bringing on us. We don't know if we're going to have another surge. So we're going to take what we've already spent, because that all falls under it for PPE and everything, and say, here's what we have for this first half, and that's going to be kind of the first process that we move forward. We will create a budget and budget outlines for budget outlines, and then present that to you at the June 8th board meeting here in this room for you all to review and to approve and move forward. Right now, there is a public hearing that's going to be required for this, because it is going to be a 1% appropriation to our budget. We're actually looking to see if, because this is Stafford Act money, if we still have to do that, but we think our assumption is that we still have to do that public hearing, but we're looking into that right now. So that'll be coming before you on June 8th for the first half of that budget, and then that's going to start our next, after that's approved, our next round of requests so that we can get that turned around. Because again, all this funding has to be spent by December 30th, or it will funnel back to the state. We will lose any money that we do not spend or need.
How much roughly have you think you've spent so far? Rough idea.
Right now, we spent about $55,000 in PPE and equipment. It's about $7,000 in overtime. There is some, I'm not exactly sure on how much we've spent on some of the leave. That there was some COVID-19 leave that came in there. I'm not exactly sure of those numbers, but I would say we're shy of, 70,000 or so at this point. Ms. Page, you probably have a better outlook on those numbers than I do with all the leave, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Are we allowed to stockpile? Are we allowed to buy in and get additional PPE? Because like you said, we don't know what's going to happen possibly this summer, maybe more likely in the fall.
Absolutely.
The resurgence, are we allowed to stockpile those PPE in advance?
Yeah, absolutely. Our plan with the PPE is when the departments put in their request for PPE, we've asked them to plan for the next year and a half and what that burn rates. We're requiring everyone to do what they're burning daily when they're open and what those burn rates are. And we're going to, once they put those requests in, we're going to actually do one very, very large order of PPE instead of all the different departments fighting vendors for the same thing, and make sure that we get the same brands, because right now we've got a hodgepodge of brands, which there's some challenges with that. So we are putting a very large PPE order once all of those requests come in, and that's going to be one project. And our plan is to order that for the next year and a half. Now, where we store that, I don't know the answer to that, but I assure you, I've got some plans in my back pocket that will be coming forward to you all to make sure we have that.
And this may be more for Mr. Hathaway, but the loans that we were talking about through the EDA, would that qualify under this program or not?
No, you cannot use the COVID relief funds on loans. But you can use them on grants, and that's one thing that we're looking at now, is establishing a grant program for our local businesses.
Okay. Thank you.
In addition to the loans, yes.
Um, One thing I wanted to say is to hand out a lot of thank yous, and especially to Chief Opec and Lisa, and to Sheriff McLaughlin and Chief Deputy Bailey, Mr. Hathaway, Justin, Krista, Miss and Wanda. Absolutely, Rebecca, been instrumental in all of this and deciphering the language of not only the grants, but the language that we're getting on a daily basis, it appears, related to COVID-19. Would also let the public know that New Kent will be in compliance with the things that are mandated by the governor and sent down to us. And so as everybody's looked at his press conference on yesterday, and so we will be drawing up guidelines for our county staff and public when attending our buildings, when our buildings are fully open again. It is absolutely our intention to continue to protect not only our staff, our valuable staff, but our residents here in the county as you attend the building to take care of your business. So what I do ask is we are mindful of everybody's rights, very mindful. However, we would ask that, especially during this time, that you be extremely kind, because we're all in this together and all of us are trying to figure this out together. And so that is absolutely the request of this board. And also to thank my fellow board members for all of your support and suggestions and input as we go through untraveled waters. So thank you so very, very much.
Madam Chair, and if I may, as we were sitting here this morning, we're fastly approaching the hurricane season, and we now have our second tropical storm that just formed this morning, Tropical Storm Bertha. And what I'd like to say to public or anyone who's watching is to kind of get your hurricane preparedness in order as well. They are predicting a pretty interesting hurricane season here on the Atlantic, but I just don't want to be complacent while we're in COVID-19, not to have our plans in order at home for the upcoming hurricane season, which looks to be active going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Hathaway?
Yes, I have one more item under other business. This regards our treasurer's office. Speaking with our treasurer yesterday, we discussed what we could do to encourage people to conduct business online and promote that option that our residents have. To promote that option that our residents have to pay bills and fees and things of that nature. Our treasurer's office did open this week by appointment only, but I still feel the safest measure is to utilize the other options as far as conducting business online and utilizing our drop box outside. Chapter 66-4 of the New Kent County Code gives the treasurer the authority to collect charges by credit card. It also gives the treasurer the authority to impose fees charged by financial institutions for processing payments. I'd like for the board to consider allowing the treasurer to waive those credit card fees, at least until the end of this year. And I think that will encourage some to conduct business online and by credit card. It would need your approval right now, because currently that would be a financial cost that the county would have to carry, being what's owed to the financial institutions.
How much is that?
You know, I anticipate we could be looking at $25,000 to $30,000, and that's just my anticipation based on what we currently budget and what we currently collect in credit card fees. I would say I am looking into if this is something that could be reimbursable from the COVID relief fund, which it possibly could, but we just talked about it yesterday, so I need to do a little research on that. And I definitely think it's a convenience to our residents. That's not something we have to take action on today. I know I've just hit you with this. If you want to wait till the June meeting to consider it further, that'll be fine too. But just something that I'm recommending.
Mr. Hathaway, also, how about the 10% late fee? You know, if the payment's due on the 1st and they pay it on the 2nd, they automatically hit with a 10% late fee. Is there any way that could be either, forgiven or waive that fee also, or possibly not such a severe? I mean, if you have if it's 1 day late, is 1% late charge up to 10 days till you got to your 10% late charge?
That is something that definitely you as a board have the authority to do. That would require a code change, and we'd have to conduct a public hearing to do that. We can definitely look into that. Most localities, through my research, pretty much have the same requirements that we do, although there are a couple of localities that do have grace periods, and maybe a 30-day grace period is appropriate. Rather than just waiving it altogether. But if you'd like to waive it, that's something you do have the authority to do.
I'd rather see us with a grace period personally than to just totally waive the fee. And I think 30 days is a bit beyond, a normal grace period.
Mm-hmm.
The grace period is usually for someone that forgot to mail the check or,
Yes.
Forgot to pay the bill. And, a week to 10 days would be considered a grace period, in my opinion. So something along those lines eliminates those mistakes that people make. You extend it to 30 days, then we're in the hole for another 30 days possibly. So
Okay.
that would be my view on it. And I'd like to take a look at what kind of numbers you come back with on the credit card fees, because I would imagine that a lot of people that are paying by check or whatever would opt to use the credit card. And isn't it like 3% of the total or something along those?
I believe it's 2.5, 2.5. Is that 2.5?
That could add up pretty quick if we've got a lot of people that are used, just because they don't have to pay that charge. So I think we should kind of take another look at that. But I'd like to wait till June to get some real numbers.
Okay. Good.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. And also when you talk about paying, we're talking about business taxes, sales taxes.
All fees, taxes, all money collected through the treasurer's office.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other business, Mr. Hathaway?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. To our board members, any other comments or business?
Should we mention about the virtual grand opening of the VCU medical?
Okay.
And the ribbon cutting?
Sure. June 1st is the opening of VCU, which we're excited about. And the facility is looking great. I've seen some pictures of the inside. I've not walked through it yet. Our fire and rescue department has performed a walkthrough and even got the opportunity to do a live run of actually bringing a patient in, not a real patient, but a patient in, and seeing how that process would work. Ms. Page, I'll have to defer to you on the time. I know that June 1st is the date of the virtual ribbon cutting.
I thought it was the 29th.
Well,
29th.
and so for clarification, originally when we had our Zoom meeting, VCU let us know that they wanted to have the ribbon cutting on June 1st. And since then, we've gotten very short notice that it would be on May the 29th. It will be virtual. From the information, it'll be 3 people there for the actual ribbon cutting. They have limited speakers and just a very scaled down. And that will be at noon. We do have a virtual meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. And they'll have more information for us as a county to get out. We're waiting on VCU Health to give us information. Right now, we have no idea as to how the program is set up, and we won't know until we get all of the details on tomorrow. So we've left everything in their hands to do, even though we're very excited about VCU Health opening. And so their actual open date will be on June the 1st, and their ribbon cutting will be on May 29th. And that's all I have, Mr. Hathaway, regarding that, regarding their opening for their building. Okay. And so one thing, when we get it, we will make sure it goes out on our website. And we will make sure that everybody's informed of it. And emails will go out to all of the board members as well, and let your constituents know and what's going on, so that they can view this new method we're going to do for our openings and ribbon cuttings. Anything else?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Spears.
At our last meeting.
Is your mic on, sir?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, police lady. At our last meeting, we had it was brought up about Mr. Hathaway and I have been working for a couple months on the proposed lighting for Kentland Trail. And I just want to give a copy out to you guys. That this was first brought to the board back on January the 13th, which has been several months ago, not 2 weeks before the budget is set. And it states in here that Mr. Wynn indicated VDOT did not install street lights, but the county could get a permit to have a contractor install them. County Administrator Rodney Hathaway suggested he could get a price and bring the information back to the board. And the board was in agreement. And like we said at the last meeting, is that we have a company that Mr. Hathaway has looked into that's willing to do the research. We have the money in the account. This would not be raising taxes. This would not be borrowing any money. This would be money that we have set aside for capital improvement projects. And it's not even on the agenda today. So I'm requesting that this be added back to the agenda and that we could possibly go forward with this company just to try to get some pricing on what it would cost to light the area. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So I think at the very last meeting that we had regarding the street light, we asked if VDOT and or Dominion Energy, if they could give us an estimate of how much it would cost before we invest the money in doing a design and engineering plan. And so my question is, where are we with that?
VDOT will not do the engineering for the street lights. My conversations with them, and they can't give us a cost on the installation of street lights until the engineering is done. There's a couple of big factors that will impact the cost. The main one being how you get power to the site. So therefore, we're kind of stuck. Everybody's telling us, even the contractors that we spoke with, that's willing to install the lighting, everybody's telling us we need to do the engineering. VDOT will not do the engineering. Not gotten any confirmation from Dominion Power whether or not they would do the engineering, but I do have pricing for utilizing one of our existing one-call contractors for the engineering work. And I'm sorry, I didn't bring that today with me, but I believe it was just under $10,000. I don't have the exact number in front of me.
Okay. Well, the chair will take into consideration of adding this to our June agenda.
Does that require three-phase power?
I do not know.
I know I had another question for VDOT regarding this, and I know they don't do the engineering and the estimate of costs. However, do they have any indication of the improvement of safety? That kind of information can we get from them regarding highway safety? And the reason I'm asking this is because I absolutely realize that we've had accidents there. I have rode the county at our interstate exchanges looking for lighting there. Even thought about if it's dark and you have overhead lights, does it make it easier to see oncoming traffic versus no lighting there, those kind of things. I think that's what my interest is. Also, getting fire and rescue and the sheriff's department involved in their thoughts about it as well.
Yes, actually that was discussed at our last meeting. Also checking with VDOT to see if they could do a safety study to determine if lighting would improve the situation there. I've submitted that request, and Mr. Wynn told me that he would check with his staff to see if that's something VDOT could do. I've not heard back from him, but I will check with him.
Okay. I don't want to give up our fight of a signal light. I don't want to get that fight up as well, and I don't want it to come back that. And I know for some of us we might find it funny. However, I don't want to give that fight up of a signal light versus a street light. And I don't want it to come back that we've installed this, so then there's absolutely no need for a signal light as well. So those are my thoughts about it. And as stated, the chair will take in consideration of putting on our June agenda.
Madam Chair, if I may add one more thing, because during this discussion at our last meeting, we also veered into the discussion of the Route 612 roundabout. And I had mentioned that I hope to have a proposal and pricing at this meeting, actually. I had a very good meeting with a contractor that's very interested in the work. We met out at the site on Friday. I've not yet received his full proposal for the work, but I should receive it by the end of this week. So hopefully by the June 8th meeting, I'll have numbers for you. And hopefully an appropriation request to follow. One thing the contractor did mention, though, is that he would prefer to do this in phases, which I agree with him, because we don't have water at the site. It makes very little sense to install all of the vegetation, the plants and trees in the middle of the summer. So he'd like to move forward with installing the wall first, and then coming back in the fall and installing the trees and vegetation. And he would want to do the grading first as well.
Okay, thank you.
If we can come back to the streetlights for a minute. My understanding is that VDOT has to give us permission to put those lights up. Is that correct?
Yes, we will need a land use permit from VDOT, any work within VDOT right-of-way. Yes.
So I would think that we're not the first rural community that's decided to put streetlights up at an interchange. I can't imagine that, since it is a permit requirement, that VDOT doesn't have a history of similar situations for us to be able to get some kind of an idea before we do a study on feasibility as to how much it's going to cost to put the lights up.
They can tell us. In fact, he quoted me the price. I just don't have it before me. I wasn't prepared for this discussion.
Okay,
but
that's fine.
They can tell you definitely how much the fixtures cost. That's no problem at all. But again, the big factor is electricity, and they don't know. I don't know. No one knows really the best place to pull from where the existing electricity is, how long that run would be. Those are the details that we have to figure out.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other business or any other comments?
Madam Chair, I just would like to remind everybody that on June 13th, Saturday, June 13th, we're going to be having the Clean County Committee is going to be sponsoring their shredding and recycling event. It's going to occur from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. They're going to have people there that'll be able to shred your confidential papers, recycle tires, eyeglasses, and literally shred your electronics into little bitty pieces. So it's about the best way to secure hard drives and stuff like that. So again, that will be Saturday here in the admin complex on June 13th from 9 to 1. It is a rain or shine event, and we're hoping that all things going forward on schedule as they are, that we'll actually be able to have the event this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. In closing, the only thing I have is that on behalf of our New Kent Board of Supervisors, we would like to extend our deepest sympathy and our condolences to Supervisor Evelyn, to Mrs. Evelyn, and to the Wood family in the passing of Miss Jane Wood. Please know that our prayers for strength and comfort with you and Ms. Evelyn and your entire family during this time. And so anyway, we absolutely will keep you in our thoughts and our prayers, sir. Thank you. All hearts and minds are clear. Our meeting schedule for the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, June the 8th, 2020, and the next work session will be at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, June the 24th, 2020. Both will be held here in the boardroom of the New Kent County Administration Building. And we will be wearing masks. And again, thank you for Fire and Rescue for screening us. And those that come into the building from the public, we thank you so much for that time that you're committed to doing this, and to the Sheriff's Department, because our courts are open, and so I can tell you that a lot of time and effort is going into protecting not only our court staff, but the public that's coming into the courts. So we thank you so much for that as well, sir. And now we stand for motion of adjournment.
So moved.
Ms. Watkins, will you poll the board?
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. You stand adjourned.